In today's video, I talk about my 2022 to 2023 summer rod and reel arsenal. Let's dive into this episode and I hope you guys enjoy. I'm going to start with this rod and reel arsenal. I'm going to actually start from the heaviest to the lightest rod, and I'm going to go over reels, line and rods. Okay, so first rod that I'm going to talk about is my heaviest setup. This is a 7-foot 6-inch heavy fast action rod. This is a Garcia's Villain, and they actually got it paired up with that Metanium DC. This is actually an 8:2 to 1 gear ratio, and I've got 50-pound braid on here. This is my frogging rod setup as it is right here right now. So this rod I actually use for another application. It's also my swim bait rod. I actually changed this reel out. I actually put a KVD or this is the Quantum KVD Tour, and it's a 6 gear ratio. So I've actually got this paired up with 20-pound fluorocarbon line, and I actually switch out the rods so that I can use this as my swim bait rod and this as my frogging rod, basically. Frogging reel, swim bait reel. Okay, next to rod and reel combo. This thing doesn't change at all. This is another Garcia's Villain, and this is a 7'2" medium heavy. I actually throw specifically jigs with this. I've got that paired up with a Shimano Corrado DC. This is the 150 size, and this is an 8:5 to 1 gear ratio. And line, I've got 15-pound fluorocarbon line on there. Yeah, I like Garcia's products and I like Shimano products. They are, in my opinion, the best products, and from quality wise they're just the best. So you guys are most probably wondering how many rods do I have? Well, if you guys can keep track, then leave comments down below. Okay, so next setup, it's another Garcia's Villain. This is again a 7.3 medium heavy fast action tip, and I've got it paired up with the newest addition to my rod and reel arsenal. This is the Shimano SLX. This is my designated Texas rig rod. So as you guys can see, I've got a Texas rig set up there. So yes, like I said, this is another medium heavy fast action tip, 7.3 in length. This is a 7:2 to 1 gear ratio, and like I said, it's paired up with 15-pound fluorocarbon line. Alright, we're still at the medium heavies. This rod, this is a Garcia's Veritas. This is actually a 6.6 medium heavy fast action tip. I've actually utilized this as a frogging rod for a very long time, but I actually thought of changing it up to a flipping rod. So I actually use this to flip heavy cover like lily pads and heavy grass, and even flipping reeds. But I've got this paired up with my Quantum EXO. This is actually the 150 size, and this is a 7:2 to 1 gear ratio. I know the gear ratio isn't really 100% correct for flipping, and also the rod, because this is a 6.6, you actually need a little bit of a lengthier rod, but it actually works extremely well for me in those flipping situations. I'm extremely accurate with this rod due to its length. I think this is absolutely perfect. I am a bit upset about the actual rod butt being too short. I would have liked maybe like 2 to 3 inches on the back, just to give me a little bit more leverage. I've got this paired up with 50-pound braid, so I can really yank those fish out of there. The reel, on the other hand, I'm most probably sooner or later going to be switching out this reel to something a little bit more beefier. You know, the reel does work, but I think it's time for an upgrade. And yeah, this is my oldest reel. It's been with me for so long, so it's very hard to give it up. But yes, this is my flipping stick. Enough of my medium heavies and heavies. Now we're going into my medium rods, and this is another Garcias rod, but this is the Ike series, and this is a 7-foot medium rod. It is a graphite rod. It loads up really nicely, and I use this rod specifically for cranking. So I'll crank lipless crankbaits, I'll crank deep diving baits, square bills, and all that type of stuff. As you guys can see, I still got my PB catcher on here. I'll leave that video link down below if you guys do want to see my PB. And the reason why I'm using a medium is with cranking, this rod loads up extremely well when a fish takes the bait. It doesn't rip those treble baits out of the fish's mouth, and it's been like a go-to rod for me. I'm extremely confident in throwing baits on this rod, especially this lipless crankbait. It does extremely well for me. The reel that I've actually got paired up on here is a 6-2-to-1 Corrado K. This is the 200 size, and this is my workhorse. As you can see, it doesn't have any more writing on the side, and it's extremely filthy. I have to do a little bit of a rod maintenance and cleaning. If you guys want to see a video on how I clean my rods and reels, I'll leave that link down below. I actually did a video like that during lockdown. The line that I actually throw on here, this is 10-pound fluorocarbon line. I might beef it up to 12-pound, but I don't ever change it to 12. I stick to a 10-pound. It is perfect. It gets that bait further down, and from a castability, it is just easy to cast a 10-pound line. Yeah, this is one of my favorite rods, and like I say, it's a go-to. I take it on every fishing trip I go to, and I will throw this lipless crankbait everywhere I go. If you guys actually watched my previous rod and reel arsenal, my 2021, I didn't actually have this rod in my arsenal. One of my rod eyes was broken, so I actually fixed this. I actually fixed this quite a while ago, and I think I did a pretty good job on this one. As you guys can see, it's pretty neat. Regardless of that, this rod is a 7-foot medium action rod with a FOSS tip. This is my oldest fishing rod. It actually was paired up with that Quantum EXO. It should actually be on here, but it's not the right application for what I'm using this rod for. This rod I use specifically for weightless bait. Weightless baits, I'm talking a weightless fluke or a weightless Senko. The reason why I use a medium is because it loads up really well and it actually launches that bait extremely well. But saying that, you do need a reel that can handle smaller baits. So I've got the Corrado 70 XG on here. This is a 8:2-to-1 gear ratio reel, and I've got it paired up with 12-pound fluorocarbon. Reason why I've got 12-pound is because I will fish a little bit heavier cover with this, so I'll throw it into empty pockets around grass and that type of stuff. So I do want to have a little bit more strength to get those fish out of the actual grass. And also a 2-to-1 gear ratio is key with weightless baits, just due to you having to pick up the slack after you've casted it, because you'll cast it out there and the bait will shimmer down, and you want to actually pick up that slack really quickly, because when a bite takes this bait, it's very hard to feel the bite. You actually just feel pressure on the line, and you want to reel that slack in. This is also a go-to rod for me. I take it everywhere I go. A lot of ponds have a lot of grass in it, so this is perfect for those grassy situations where you cast out that weightless lure and it sits on top of that grass, and the fish can't resist this floating thing that's coming down from above. This is another medium action rod. This is a medium FOSS tip. This is a Quantum Smoke. I actually use this specifically for jerkbait fishing only. I don't change this. I don't change this rod at all, this reel, nothing. I've got that paired up with that Corrado 70 MGL. This is an extremely good reel. It's got an extremely light spool, so it can throw lighter baits. And jerkbaits, to me, they aren't the heaviest baits, but they're also not the lightest baits. So I'm throwing an 8:2:1 gear ratio with my jerkbaits, just due to having to pick up that slack as quick as possible to be able to jerk that jerkbait. So I'll fish deep divers, as this one is right here, and I'll also fish shallow diving jerkbaits. The line that I've got on here is 12 pound, just due to maybe the fish grabbing the whole bait, and then you actually just want that abrasion resistance on your actual line. 10 pound is actually the right line for it because it gets that bait a little bit deeper, but a 12 pound line for me has worked, and I've caught many fish on the setup, and I don't go anywhere without a jerkbait setup when we're fishing off the boat or the bank. Okay, next medium powered rod. I don't use this for dragging baits. I actually use this specifically for bladed baits, and I'm obviously also utilizing it as my swim jig rod. This is a 7.4 Daiwa Tatula. This is actually the spinnerbait and blade rod, if you guys can actually see that. And I've got it paired up with the Daiwa Tatula. This is a 7:1:1 gear ratio, and I've got 12 pound fluorocarbon line on here. I know throwing spinnerbaits and chatterbaits and maybe even swim jigs, I should actually beef up the line a little bit, but it has worked for me, and I'm not going to change it out right now. So this rod blank, it's actually a glass composite rod, so it's not graphite, so it's a bit of a heavier rod, but it doesn't put that much fatigue on your arms or on your hands. But the reason why it's a glass composite rod is because when you actually cast it out there and a fish actually bites your lure, you don't actually rip that spinnerbait or that chatterbait out of the fish's mouth, so it loads up really well and the fish gets a really good hook set. So yeah, this is a solid cork grip. I'm not a huge fan of solid grips, but I got this for a really good deal, so I had to buy it. But yeah, I have one issue about this reel, is the handle. The actual pitch of this handle is extremely small. So if you guys know where I can get replacement parts for handles, especially for this Daiwa Tatula, please leave it linked down below, because I want an extended handle pitch. It just gives me a little bit more control, and just due to you being able to horse those fish in, and it just feels a bit better. Let's jump into my spinning gear. I'm gonna go from heaviest action to lightest action. This is actually a smash bass rod, so it's not the most expensive and it's not the greatest rod. It does the job. It's not the greatest blank. I'll be very honest, it's not very light. For the price point, I think it was 400 bucks. I think it's actually pretty decent. Don't really use this rod too often. I have been trying to use it just for like finesse applications, like finesse jigging and throwing underspins. That really works for this rod. So this is this is a 7-foot medium heavy fast tip. I know it's a medium heavy, but just due to me throwing finesse jigs, they do still have a bigger hook. Like the actual gauge of the hook is quite big. Then obviously from a underspin to maybe even a small jig head, like a small ball head with a paddle tail on the back, they all still have quite decent size gauge hooks, and you do want a little bit more power in your rod to actually get that hook pinned. So the reel that I've got paired up with this, I've actually done a review on that. I'll leave that link down below if you guys do want to buy this reel. I particularly like this reel. It's not the lightest reel, it's quite heavy, but it does the job. And I think for the application that I want to do, the heavier reel doesn't really matter. So the reel that I've got on here is the Fox Rage Warrior. This is the 2500 size, and like I said, I'll leave it linked down below in the description if you guys want to watch that review of this Fox Rage Warrior. The gear ratio on this is a 5:2:1 gear ratio, so you can really crawl bait, and you can also just really slowly retrieve those underspins and those small little paddle tails. But yes, this is a 5:2:1 gear ratio, and I've got it paired up with 20-pound braid. I used to have fluorocarbon line on here, but I've realized with a spinning rod, a spinning reel, fluorocarbon line, you get a lot of line coils and it doesn't cast very well, and you get a lot of wind knots. So I changed that out to this. It's like a gray braid. It's extremely stealthy, and it works really well. And obviously with that braid, that 20-pound, what I've actually done is specifically for this rod is I've actually paired it up with a 15-pound fluorocarbon leader. And that's that basically on my first spinning rod. I don't go anywhere without this setup, and this setup is specifically set up to do one thing, and I'm pretty sure you guys at home are thinking, we know exactly what it is for. But yes, it is for that wacky rig, and you guys have seen me crash fish on this wacky rig. This rod is a Daiwa ProRex spinning rod. This is actually a medium light, and it's a 7-foot rod. I'm a big finesse fisherman, and I love fishing light lures, light line. This rod was extremely appealing to me at first, or it was extremely appealing to me just due to it being a two-piece. You know, I actually bought this because I thought, you know what, I'm gonna keep this rod and reel setup in my car, packed away underneath the seat, so if I see a body of water, I'll just stop by and fish quickly. But turns out that this V-joint on this ProRex is extremely good. It's that good that you don't actually know it's a two-piece. It actually feels like a one-piece. So I've actually utilized this rod as a one-piece, and I never take it apart. The reel I've got on here is actually the Daiwa ProRex reel. This is a 2500 size reel. It's not the most expensive reel. I think a lot of it is plastic components, but for what it does and for what I need it for, it's extremely perfect. It's extremely light and it's extremely sensitive. I love this rod to bits. Like I say, I'll never go anywhere without this rod. Doesn't actually say. Okay, so it doesn't actually say what gear ratio it is, but I'm pretty sure it's a 5:2:1 gear ratio or 5:5:1 gear ratio. It's a very low gear ratio, so just due to you fishing finesse applications, just trying to keep that bait in the fish's face for as long as possible is extremely key with spinning setups. The line that I've got paired up on here is 15-pound braid. Reason why I've got braid on here instead of fluorocarbon is just because fluorocarbon has a lot of memory, and when you cast it, it coils and you don't get that casting distance. And also from a braid perspective, you have a lot more sensitivity. You can feel those bites a little bit better. Then what I actually do with this 15-pound braid is I actually taper it down to either a 10-pound or an 8-pound. Reason why I taper it down to a 10-pound is just due to maybe fishing a little bit more heavier cover like GNU Valley. It's got a lot of grass and you just want a little bit more strength behind the rod and behind the line to get those fish in. 8-pound I will fish more open water, so more rockier banks where there's not that much structure around. Okay, second ProRex rod. This is my second ProRex rod and it's the exact same. It's a medium light 7-foot. It's a fast action tip, so they are extremely sensitive, and the feel you get off these rods is great. This rod is my designated drop shot rod or Ned rig rod. I don't really change out my drop shot very often. As you guys can see, I've got a drop shot tied on right now just from my Loscorp competition. But I've got a Quantum Smoke on here. This is I also don't know what the gear ratio is on this, but I'm pretty sure it's quite a low gear ratio. I would also say it's about a 5:1 gear ratio. And I've got this paired up with 15-pound braid, and reason why it's yellow is just due to me wanting to see the line. It being high vis, it just makes you detect those light bites that you just can't see with a green line or a extremely camouflaged line. Then with that, I actually taper it down to a 10-pound fluorocarbon leader. That's just due to you just fishing open water or even just heavier cover. So on my drop shots I'll strictly throw a 10-pound, and obviously on my nets I'll throw a 10-pound. 10-pound for me just works the best because a drop shot sometimes goes down the fish's throat, and the abrasion on the line is just better than using a 8-pound. The fish have teeth, so they cut this line and then you lose your fish all the time. That is all my fishing rods. Leave comments down below to just put down how many rods I have. I am going to be making a video about why fishermen need so many rods soon in the future. I think this is a question that every fisherman gets and doesn't know the answer to the actual question, and I'm going to be enlightening you guys on what to answer for that question if it pops up in the future. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode of my rod and reel arsenal. Leave comments down below, hit that thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and I'll check you guys on the next episode.